TF2's competitive matchmaking for the longest time has been seen by the community as the worst game mode in TF2. Unloved for many years by the development team and left riddled with bots, cheaters, bugs, long queue times, and no real reason to play that over casual mode or community servers. But I wanted to find out for myself why that was. Was what the community saying true? Is it actually as bad as we might have all thought it was, especially after all of these years of not playing it? So I chose to embark on a journey to play 100 games of TF2's competitive mode, see what all the fuss was about, and to see if it was actually a game mode people should try and play more. I also set out on this journey last February. It has been nearly a year since I started this thing. Listen, I had other videos to make, all right? Like I said, I started this in February and I played until June. So the bot ban wave that happened last year hadn't happened while I was making this. This is why I mentioned cheaters in games all of the time, since this was still a very normal thing to be seeing, especially while I was recording. As always, I played all of these games over on Twitch. So if you're interested in seeing me do more stuff like this, the link is in the description. So go give me a follow. My Twitch is also now TF2 exclusive again as well. So follow me there. And with that, day one begins. A day that honestly I thought could have been the only day I did this in case I had a horrible time and scrapped the whole idea entirely. I started immediately noticing throughout the 6 games I played on day one was that a lot of the people were the same game to game, and it definitely felt as though there was a small community of players for this game mode who never really were that interested in casual. So in any given region, on a relatively quiet part of the day, you were probably going to run into the same people over and over again, and a lot of the time that's really good. It's not so great when they're cheating though. I actually kind of liked running into the same people every so often. It does bring out a nice sense of community seeing the same people game in, game out. Unless, of course, the person is cheating, like I said. It kind of reminds me of CSGO 10-mans when you got like all of your friends into a game together and you were just playing against each other. Like, I miss those days. Oh, and also, after playing my first game, I noticed that my rank dropped down massively. Like, literally down to the bottom from where I was. So that was a bit of a bummer to start the first day. During the 6 games I played on day one, 3 of those had blatant cheaters. And one of them is one where I'm not really sure if they were cheating. I think they were. I was fairly confident at the time, but I couldn't tell you with any clarity that they were. What I did notice though was that even though there were people cheating on the other team, it didn't seem to ruin the game completely. It's almost like they knew what they were doing, didn't really care about using it to win, but were still kind of messing around and trying not to ruin the fun for everybody else, while still enjoying cheating sometimes. Or maybe they're just bad at cheating, I don't know. Now, the only reason I bring this up is because I won all 3 of those games that had cheaters in them. Whether they were on my team or not, I still won. Now, I don't think they were consistently cheating throughout the entire game, but they definitely were cheating throughout parts of it, and then stopped again. And the 2 games I played at the end where we definitely didn't have any cheaters, I remember being some of the most fun I've had playing TF2 in a very long time. They were such good games. I wrote in my note at the time that if TF2 had a good anti-cheat and more people were playing comp, that this game mode would be incredible. On day 1 out of the 6 games, I ended up with a win-loss ratio of 5-1, which is not bad considering how many cheaters there were in these games. But funnily enough, because of this day, I was actually looking forward to playing again, and I didn't want to quit already. On day 2, I played 9 games. Well, technically 7 games, since 2 of them didn't start, and because of the nature of queuing for comp and how that sometimes can take a long time, I'm counting abandoned matches. Disagree with it all you want, I don't care, I'm counting them. The first game of the day was another game that I really thoroughly enjoyed playing in. It was a close game, I feel like I played okay, and people were actually trying to win, which is really nice. Things were going fairly normally that day until I reached game 11, which I got shown on my screen was a rank up game. I lost that rank up game because one of the morons on my team was AFK. Well, never mind then. Now, although we didn't win that rank up game, the next 2 games I played also counted as rank up games, but so eventually on game 14, I won one and shot right the way back up to the 6th rank. Contract Killer 3. It's not bad, but it's still lower than I started on. Out of the 7 games I ended up playing today, I only thought one person could have been cheating, but he was in the game on 2 different occasions. But to be honest, I genuinely couldn't tell whether he was or not. I won one and lost one while he was in the server. Also, rank up games were kind of stressful. Maybe that's because I cared too much about what rank I could get from it. Maybe I was playing it up for stream. I don't know, but there was definitely some layer of stress that came from knowing you could rank up that game. The total win-loss ratio of the day was that I won 4 and lost 3, putting the total ratio up to 9-4. So I'm pretty happy about that so far. I remember thinking at the time that the games I was playing for the most part were actually way more fun than casual was at the time. Like I said though, this was when the bots were still going on and you literally couldn't play casual. So actually getting games without cheaters in where people were trying to win and I could actually play was really nice and super refreshing. And then day 3 was a little bit different. It was the first time I found myself getting properly frustrated while playing. The first 2 games where I lost to a cheater, I felt a little bit whatever about it. Like, okay, cool, they're cheating, lost that, doesn't really matter. But in the 3rd game I played against the cheater that day, it felt as though the enemy team was still trying their absolute hardest and playing to their fullest, even when they had a cheater on their team. Things like healing the cheater bot is something that always annoys me, and to be honest, it makes you as bad as a cheater in my book. Maybe they were queued together, I don't know, but whenever I had a cheater on my team during this 100 games, I basically didn't play because they were already going up against the cheater. Why would I also try my hardest to win when there's a bot on my team? But just quickly going back to that 2nd game though, I did lose it because it was on my team and I held back. And because a lot of the people were the same in the 3rd game, I thought they'd maybe do the same, but they didn't. The thing with competitive matchmaking is that there isn't an option to kick players. It blacks it out so you just can't do it. Like, yeah, you'll be at a disadvantage, but I'd honestly rather kick the person and play with 5. I don't want to have to sit there and not want to try as hard to win because somebody's cheating in my game that I can't do anything about. I just don't get why people cheat, man. But other than those games, I actually had a pretty decent time. The other ones were a little bit better. I also seem to notice that this day was filled with like loads of newer players. Like people who genuinely had very little game knowledge at all, which contrasts massively to what we've been seeing so far, where a lot of the players have actually been pretty good. It was weird, but I don't want to discourage new players from trying stuff, and I'm glad they're playing TF2 still. It was just something I noticed throughout this day more than any other, that a lot of these people didn't know what half of the classes do. Listen, I know I'm bad, but I'm sure skill-based matchmaking doesn't think I'm that bad that it's putting me with people who installed the game today. Either way, day 3, I played 9 games. I lost 5 of those games, and I won 3 of them, and then 1 just didn't start, bringing the win-loss ratio up to 12-9. It's not looking so great anymore, but when you play against cheaters for a lot of the day, that's bound to happen. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised at this point I was winning any games. I thought I'd be cheated against every game and be miserable. Day 4 was a lot better. And when I say a lot better, I mean a lot better. Every single game was really fun. There was a game that was super laggy for some reason. Still really fun. I also queued into Turbine, which was an interesting choice for the competitive map pool, but it turned into a really fun game. I've always said about CTF is that if you had both teams playing to win the entire time, I think I'd find them way more fun. Like both teams trying to make the game end instead of sitting in huge nests with 7 sentries kind of thing. But that's what Comp Turbine is like. Both teams want to play to win, so you get way less sentries in the intel room so you can actually play the game. The only game that wasn't so fun throughout today was the last game, game 31, where we essentially just got rolled. They weren't cheating or anything like that. They were just better than myself and the rest of my team. But other than that one game, it was an incredibly fun day of competitive matchmaking. This was also the first day that I was fully confident that there was nobody on either my team or the enemy team that had been cheating whatsoever. And at that time of TF2's life, that was unheard of. That ecstatic feeling didn't last quite as long as I was hoping for, because day 5 consisted of 5 abandoned games out of the 9 I tried playing. I'm not sure why it feels like some days you can get loads of good games, some days loads of bad ones, and others you just can't seem to get any games. The queue times in the EU region actually aren't so bad for comp, and for a long time I couldn't actually finish a casual match without being dragged into a competitive one. We once again played Turbine on one of the few games I did manage to play today, and it was still awesome. I actually really enjoy competitive Turbine, so I don't want to hear any slander about it, please. As for the other games, I enjoyed playing in most of them, to be fair. There was nothing crazy happening, but they were still good games. The only game that was slightly annoying was the Badlands match on game 36, where the team just weren't good enough to fight off the enemies, especially with somebody who was AFK. But you can't win every single game, and we've had a pretty good run of games recently, so I'm not too worried about losing one. It was this point in the challenge though where I started really realizing just how long this whole thing was going to take. But I was kind of like too far gone. The following day, I only managed to play 4 games in my entire stream. Now granted, I was playing fairly late at night, so I wasn't expecting many people to be on playing. There was one game where I was confused about whether or not someone was cheating, and the only reason I know that is because I wrote cheater with 5 question marks in my notes and nothing else. So thanks, that was really helpful past me. Other than that though, the games were okay. I won 3, lost 1, happy days. The next couple of days were also just pretty standard. None of the games I played really stood out to me. There were a couple with cheaters in, but one of them didn't really matter because the team sucked anyway. So even if they weren't cheating, they would have just rolled us. And for one of the days, the queue time seemed to be far longer than any of the other days so far. Now, bear in mind, I've been waiting maybe 5-10 minutes for queues for most of this challenge so far. But for one of the days, it felt far longer. And on that same day, one of the games lasted so long that I managed to rack up 92 points in a competitive matchmaking game, which felt absolutely crazy. It was still really fun, but oh my god, how am I getting 92 points in a competitive matchmaking game? And I will say, at this point of the challenge, I am still genuinely surprised how much fun I was having in some of these games. It definitely felt like a nice escape from the hell that was casual matchmaking back then for a while, and I actually had a chance to play the games without cheaters in, which was nice. I did start noticing at this point, because we've crossed game 50, that a lot of games we've tried to play haven't started. And I counted, and on game 50, 11 of those games we've tried to play have just been abandoned, which means nearly 10% of the entire challenge just didn't happen. I don't know if it's because people are queuing for ages, so they leave their computer or go to sleep or something like that. Then they queue into a game and then it gets abandoned or something. I don't really know. I just don't get how so many games start and then somebody never joins or abandons really early. It's so weird. The day after that, I only played 2 games. There just wasn't any going on for some reason. I literally didn't find any. I won 1, I lost 1, and that was it. I ranked up on the win to Executioner 1, which was 1 rank below where I started at. Speaking of the ranks, I still have no idea how they work still, because it just seems so random when it comes to you ranking up. The MMR seems to do nothing in relation to the ranks you're given either, and I wish these made more sense because it genuinely felt throughout the entire 100 games that I was playing that nothing on that side of the matchmaking made any sense whatsoever or even was doing anything. Normally, you'd expect the MMR to actually have an impact, but it doesn't. And the fact that I jumped from the 2nd rank to the 6th rank all that time ago, like, what does that mean? How did I drop from rank 8 to rank 2? It makes no sense. Either way, we keep trucking away. There were a few days where I didn't play many games, but I also didn't take too many notes either because I was either busy or just forgot. We were struggling to get more than 2 or 3 games in most days though. And that is weird to me because it's been the complete opposite throughout the rest of the challenge. Like, we've been finding quite a lot of games in a stream and managing to play a fair amount of them too. But now it's just down to like 2 or 3. Game 65 was where things started seemingly going back to normal. But I was greeted with this by a cheating heavy who had a vaccinator medic. Why is this thing even in the game still? Get rid of it. Awful game. But the game rewarded me straight after that by giving me Turbine again, which I managed to win. And the game after that, I also wrote that it was a lovely game, so that's nice. And then the 2 after that, I lost, so that's good. I did, though, get 69 points on game 69, so I couldn't have asked for much else from the day, could I? The next day was weird. Barely got to play the first one since we absolutely got steamrolled. so I was barely alive. And the second game, we went around down almost instantly and managed to reverse sweep for the win, with a spy capping the final point, which was just insane. The third game was a super close game, but unfortunately ended up in a loss. It is those kind of games that are the most devastating because of how hard you fought just to lose at the end. I noticed that for the most part as well, while playing competitive, is that if you don't have cheaters in the game, but you still end up losing, it's sometimes not as annoying as I would have thought it was. Maybe it's the approach I have to the game nowadays, or maybe it's to do with the game mode, but a lot of these losses that were close or where the other team just played better than us haven't wound me up as much as I thought they were going to. Or maybe it has more to do with the fact that ranks literally make no sense, MMR means nothing, and there's no benefit at all to trying to rank up. Who knows? Although saying that, the next day of games completely negates that last point. This was the most frustrating day of the challenge so far. If this was day one, the challenge would have been scrapped in the bin, never would have played this game mode again. But because I was nearing the end, this was literally game 77 as the stream started today, I had to keep playing. I was playing against a Vaccinator heavy combo, which is just impossible to deal with. The Huntsman was working for a little bit and gave us a chance, but they were just too good and our team weren't as good as they needed to be. Whereas if I didn't hit my shot super consistently, they could basically just do whatever they wanted with our team. I don't exactly remember how we lost game 78. I just wrote down that it was super confusing and annoying and I'm not having fun with it. Every other day, I would have said, despite the losses, it was still a fun experience, but today just wasn't. And to top it all off, 2 games didn't start, and I lost the last game, deranking 2 more ranks, and it was a super long game too. So this was just an incredibly frustrating and annoying day, and I'm glad it was over by the end of it. But it turns out the world works in weird ways because the next day of my games were just incredibly fun. Each game I played was crazy dominant. We had a Turbine game 2 to top it off, which made it even more fun. And it was the complete polar opposite of the day before, which just goes to show you that some days are just not your days and other days are your days, if that makes sense. I wanted to give up yesterday, but today was the day that showed me that I could still enjoy this game mode despite how bad some games can actually be. At the end of the stream, we're now at game 88, which means we're nearly at the end of this challenge. My notes for the second to last day are definitely interesting. The first game we managed to play was a super fun game. I genuinely really enjoyed it. But for the rest of the day, I just kept losing, man, due to my team having no idea what was going on in the game. I wasn't exactly sure if they were brand new players like we talked about earlier, or if they just weren't thinking while they were playing the game, but they just didn't play well. And this is especially frustrating in the games where I feel like I'm playing pretty good myself, but just one person playing well isn't enough to carry a bad team to victory, especially if the better player on the team is me. We had an NG building where the game was never going to make it to either. He did this for every round of the game, knowing that nobody got there last time, and still does it. So I feel like that might just be a new player. I do feel like competitive matchmaking would be a lot better if you played it with other people. I solo queued literally all of these games, so I bet if I was queuing with a stack of 5 people, I might not have found as many games to start with, but the games I did find probably would have been more fun, probably would have done better in them, and had a much different experience. But after it all, it is time for the final day of gaming. 6 games to go, and it was a completely even split of winning and losing at the end. 3 wins, 3 losses, and no abandoned games today. The first loss we took was because my team was kind of bad, but I also wasn't sure if their team had a cheater or not. Felt like it could have been, and I didn't want to accuse people if they weren't cheating. The next game was a fun game that we ended up winning, and then I lost again. The team wasn't that great, and we just couldn't get it together enough to win the match, so standard stuff. And then we won again. Another long game by competitive matchmaking standards, but was still pretty decent. And then I lost because I just wasn't playing well. And then on game 100, we managed to win the game. I myself had a pretty good game, and as we stood on the stage for the final time, somebody on the other team told me to off myself, which was probably the most perfect ending I could have possibly asked for to this challenge. I felt really happy with how that last game had gone, but for the most part today, it really cemented this feeling I've been having in this matchmaking stuff, is that if one person on your team doesn't really know how to play, or maybe is just slightly newer, or even just having a bad game for once, it just makes it really hard for the rest of the team to carry that weight. Sometimes during this 100 games, I was that player, for sure. I'll be the first to put my hands up and say that I am not the best. I'll also put my hands up and say that I'm not good enough really to carry one or two bad players through a game by myself unless the enemies just turn their monitors off. But generally, over the course of the 100 games, I found myself enjoying the competitive matchmaking experience far more than I thought it would. I was seeing similar names throughout the entire challenge too, considering it was going on for a good couple of months, which was actually quite nice. You knew who was a decent player by the end of it and what kind of names people had if they were cheating too. So you kind of got to know a lot of the other people in this community as well, just from seeing them in games a lot. But there were a few names you knew were cheaters, so you knew you were in for a bad time. My main issue was that games did get abandoned quite a lot, and I'm glad I counted them in this challenge, else this could have gone on for a lot longer. Because out of the 100 games I played, 23 of those games did not start, because somebody either left or abandoned at the very beginning. Nearly a quarter of my games that I got into failed to even start, which is just crazy. Now, while I was playing, it definitely didn't feel like that huge of a dent, but looking back on it now, that number is actually nuts. Another thing I noticed was that there was far less cheating than I thought in this too. I was keeping track, and out of the 100 games I played, I guess 77 games I played, only 13 of those had obvious cheaters in them. Maybe 15 or 16 games total if you count all the times I wasn't exactly sure, but compare that to like the 95% of games that had bots in them and casual at the time, I would happily take the odds of competitive matchmaking any day. I did end this challenge with a lower rank than I started on, so if I just decided never to play this game mode, my rank that I was sitting at would have been higher than after spending this long playing the game. So, my win-loss ratio. By the end of the 77 games that I played, I ended up winning 45 of those games, and I lost 32 of those games, with then 23 of them just not starting. I'm not too upset by the win-loss ratio. I was hoping to start with that it just wasn't 0 to 100 because of cheaters or something. So the fact I won more than I lost realistically blew any expectations I had out of the water completely. I would genuinely recommend trying out comp if you have the pass for it. I know it's not been a crazy popular game mode since it's come out, but maybe even just trying to play it for a few days and see what kind of games you get would maybe make you realize it's not as bad as you thought. Now, I know the queue times in other regions can vary a lot. I feel lucky that living in England and being in Europe and getting into Europe servers, we find games fairly quickly. I would still say it's worth giving it a go if you're going to be on TF2 for a while. So the bad games were bad, but they were fast most of the time, so the pain didn't last long. And the good games were genuinely some of the most fun I've had playing TF2 in a very long time. And as I'm writing that from the past where the bots were still in casual, it does still kind of stand today. This wasn't a horrendous experience like I thought it was going to be. And I actually did really enjoy playing the in-game matchmaking. And I never thought that would be the conclusion I would draw at the end of the 100 games. So thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.